Welcome to the Pilgrim Litigation Nation with Daniel Hutton.
Hello and welcome to Pilgrimation Litigation Nation with Daniel Hutton. Daniel is a skilled attorney based in Stoughton, Massachusetts, specializing in personal injury, auto accident law, criminal law, animal bite law, and civil rights. Daniel is here to share his expertise and insights on these critical legal areas. My name is Kevin Rosenquist. I am your host, and today's episode is Case Closed, the critical evidence that makes or breaks personal injury claims. Daniel, welcome back.
Glad to be back. Please fire away. I'm ready to go.
All right, let's do it. Well, let's start out here. Can you walk us through the types of evidence that are most critical in building a successful personal injury case?
With regards to a motor vehicle accident, most civil actions, you have two parts. One, you have liability. You have to figure out who's at fault. And the second part is damages. How bad the person was actually hurt, how bad the property damage was as a result of the motor vehicle accident. So this evidence has to be preserved. So with regards to liability, I touched on this previously. You want to take pictures at the accident scene so you can see the damages to the vehicle. But the other thing you want to do is you want to take pictures of the accident scene itself, the roads, the traffic lights, because believe it or not, the accident scene will change over time. For example, in Massachusetts, you have a statute of limitations of 3 years for bodily injury. So you have to file the lawsuit within 3 years of the accident. But within 1 year of the accident, they could really change how the intersection, if it was an intersection accident, occurred with regards to changing the physical intersection. I've had cases where there were traffic lights when I got to the accident scene preparing for a trial for an accident that happened 2 years earlier. But when the accident happened, there weren't traffic lights. All of a sudden, you had 4 lanes of travel, 2 going in each direction at the accident scene near the intersection. However, when the accident happened, it was only 2 lanes of travel, 1 in each direction. Paint markings had changed, etc. So you really, really want to take pictures of the accident scene because they will change over time. They will change in 2 or 3 years later. And then you're going to be very sorry that you didn't record that because the jury's not going to see it.
When it comes to witness statements, how impactful can they be in personal injury cases, and how do you ensure that they're properly documented and presented in court?
Well, that's an interesting question that you have because witness statements deal with memory, and memory can be faulty. People's memories change. And I think the experts would tell you that memories are more profound when there's greater emotion. And if you have less emotion, they're more likely to fade. So often I try to get statements when the memories are fresh in people's minds, when the emotions are stronger right after an accident. But that doesn't mean they're correct. For example, I had indicated a moment ago that you should take pictures. And one of the things that you should take pictures of is tire marks, brake marks prior to the accident. So you can see how long it took a vehicle to stop or at least stop before it hits something. So you can get an idea of speed. And the reason why that's important is because witnesses go down, like police, and make police reports. And off of that police report, often they will look at the tire marks and try to calculate a speed. And sometimes the police are just wrong. Mm-hmm. I've had to go to the accident scene 2 or 3 days later because I got a hold of a police report. When I saw the length of the tire marks on that police report, I said, my God, my client had to be speeding at an excessive rate, which is contrary to what my client is telling me. So I went down there with the cameras and so forth, and I was able to actually show by recording how long the tire marks actually were. And they're actually about half of what the policeman had written in the report. Don't know why he made such an error, but he did.
Wow.
And so what I can only say is witness testimony at times is faulty. So preserving the evidence and getting a hold of the witness testimony as quickly as possible can be very critical because, quite frankly, had I not preserved the tire marks by photographic evidence, the insurance company, would have made settlement a lot more difficult for my client because they would have relied on the police report. And second, when it came to trial, that police officer who would have had many different accident scenes that he had seen from the date of the accident until the date of trial would have been refreshing his memories because he had gone to so many accident scenes. A lot of the facts would be jumbled, where it's one accident scene is very similar to the next. So the police will use their reports to refresh their memories prior to testimony. Again, when a jury hears a police officer testify, they say to themselves, well, there's a fellow that doesn't have a dog in the fight. We will believe him. So it's very important to get that witness testimony, including the police reports, so you can already preserve the evidence to rebut that.
What about medical evidence? How does that play into personal injury claims? How does that process work? Do you recommend people always go to a doctor after an accident? And can you kind of talk about how
Sure.
medical records support cases?
That does not go to liability. That goes to the damages, which is the second part of the legal theory behind the motor vehicle accident. And roughly speaking, most of the times, I will tell the client, we have to preserve the evidence. Injured, you only have one body to go through life. And if you're hurt and you've hurt yourself, you might, by taking too much time, deny yourself medical treatment through the insurance policies. Within Massachusetts, we have something called personal injury protection benefits, where you have to fill out personal injury protection benefit applications, and you have a certain amount of time to do that. And if you don't, well, then the insurance company might not pay for your medical treatment. So timeliness is a factor. Preserving evidence in those medical records is very important. Now, I tell my clients, what we don't want to do is commit insurance fraud. Some people feel that if they're in an accident, they should be able to get some money for it, and they will actually go to the doctors when they're not hurt. So I will tell my people, if you're not hurt, I don't want you committing fraud, because I don't want to see you be exposed to criminal liability, and that has happened, unfortunately, to a few of my clients. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that normally doesn't get talked about when it comes to preserving evidence is psychological records, where somebody has had trauma in the emotional area. But I say you do have to go to preserve that evidence. Now, years ago, I had a client where, in so many words, he was emotionally hurt, but he was macho. He was a man. So the first thing he says to the psychiatrist is, I'm only here because my attorney told me to go here. I'm not hurt at all. And you can just well imagine how the jury scoffed when that was read to them during the trial.
Right.
An attorney stands up there in the closing statement, closing argument to the jury, and says, well, of course the attorney told the client to do that. I would really shake my head about an attorney that didn't do it, because they would have failed to preserve the evidence. And after you get past the first page, when you start reading how that accident affected the person's well-being, the relationships, etc., then you understand that the attorney did the right thing, because if he hadn't done that, or she hadn't done that, you wouldn't be able to have a truthful insight of the facts to render a proper verdict.
We talked last episode about technology, dash cams, that kind of stuff. What about social media posts, phone records, GPS data? How does all that stuff kind of impact personal injury cases?
That's a very good question. Insurance companies will first off request that. And they will request that because immediately after the accident, they want to see if the person was actually hurt, if they're joking around by the accident, and they're presently making a fraudulent claim. I have had social media where people are actually sitting in hospital beds after a motor vehicle accident, but they were joking, and that was an effective fact that was brought up. Oddly enough, it was not my client that was injured. It was a motor vehicle accident that had a debris field of about 100 yards. It was a serious accident, but it was the other people that had wrongfully hit my client by rear-ending them, going way past the speed limit. And so I was able to use that social media for negotiation with the insurance company, because I could clearly say, look, these are your guys joking about what they did to my client. When the jury sees that, that's going to blow up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did make settlement possible prior to trial. And I will say that sword cuts both ways, because quite frankly, the insurance companies want to see if your people are outside having a good time at a barbecue, an hour after the accident where they can say, see, your people really weren't hurt.
Yeah, you're right. It's a double-edged sword there. Like sometimes it can help, sometimes it can hurt. During a case, when when a case is ongoing, do you encourage your clients to just kind of avoid social media, or at least avoid talking about anything related to the accident?
That depends. Okay. You're afraid that your clients will say something that hurts the case.
Right.
But when people are hurt, one of the things that's affected is their family relationships. Like if you're about to go on a vacation and your whole family, let's say, is flying down to Florida to go to the beach, and you can't go. Social media, where all your family members are in Florida taking pictures and having a wonderful time, and they're waving at you back home, well, then the jury gets to see that you missed something, that you're never going to be able to participate in that event. So the social media actually shows how that accident impacted a person's life. And that can not just be vacations, it can be a wedding, etc. So social media is important. And so, again, it's a two-edged sword. If you're going to sit there and party right after the accident, it's going to hurt you. But if it shows how your family relations were affected, it can be very effective.
What about some expert witnesses? Like I really think that accident reconstruction specialists is kind of a cool. I mean, accidents are horrible. Don't get me wrong, but that's like a cool thing that people can actually like look at evidence and reconstruct an accident. Can you talk about the role that they play, and how often do you bring in experts like that?
Well, I don't bring them in that often because they can be very expensive. I try to settle the case before my clients incur a substantial litigation fee. Mm-hmm. If they are brought in, often they're brought in by the insurance companies because they're happy to spend $5,000 on an expert. Now, if I were to bring them in, it's going to be something that's on a high-end case where there's significant damages that have been incurred by my client. So my client is comfortable in spending that fee. And it's going to be one that's critical in determining who's at fault. And so clearly I would not spend $5,000 an expert if the case was only worth $10,000.
Right.
But if I had a case where I thought it was $100,000, then I would say, it's better to be I don't want to say penny wise and pound foolish. I want to say the reverse of that. It's better to be a pound wise and a penny foolish in this one. And we got to spend the money to win the case. Mm-hmm. Now, the experts, they're pretty standard, and they're able to look at the location of the damages to the vehicle, and they'll tell you with regards to indentations, etc., skid marks, the speed, and so forth. Often, state police can do that also if it was a significant accident. And I've had a case where you've had state police reconstruct an accident also. It doesn't have to be a private specialist or expert. State police can do it also.
Is there any particular genre of evidence that you find is the most helpful to winning a case?
That really is on a case-by-case basis because facts are often very different.
Right.
And so with regards to a motor vehicle accident, the genre that I would specialize in or say is most important when it comes to the actual damages are the medical records, right? And I take that with the assumption that you're not going to file a lawsuit where your client's at fault for the accident. Mm-hmm. So it's the medical records that really make an impact on a jury when they read through it, where they can see not just what the doctor saw, but what the doctor predicts with regards to future pain and suffering. Like somebody that was having arthritis but not feeling any pain, they're asymptomatic, but because of the injuries and so forth, they now have pain. And the doctors will say, according to AMA guidelines, et cetera, you can expect this in the future or this problem in the future. And so those medical records are very important when it comes to damages.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Pilgrim Litigation Nation with Daniel Hutton. For more information or to connect with Daniel, visit dhuttonlaw.com. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Daniel, it's always great talking with you. Thanks so much for your time.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and comment below.